Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break, I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, this time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. Back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break, I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, this time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
Welcome to the stream, everybody. It's Tuesday night, and it's time for the news with JB and ItsBlunty. Welcome to the stream, Blunty. How you doing today, man?
Good, JB. How's it going?
I'm doing good. We have got some crazy news items for this week. Some really
Yeah.
crazy stuff. But before we get into that, I also want to say hello to all of you here in the chat. A lot of debate. First of all, we could hear the song. For some reason, last week, the song didn't go over. I don't know why. We could hear the song.
Yeah.
Lots of
We got
debate
the-
on this song.
As somebody said last week, it was no good for you.
It was no good for me. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody said I like the old song better. The old song is still used for my Q&A live streams on Sundays and Mondays, but I thought the news should have its own song. So, and I like that song. Some people don't like my girly taste in music, but what can I say? I'm a little quiet. Oh, I know why I'm quiet. Hang on. There we go. Now I'm not quiet anymore.
I like it. I think it's a good song.
Oh, thank you. I had an audio filter active on my OBS, and it was for, I had one audio filter for when I'm live, but then I have the filter off for when I'm recording because I do another set of filters in Premiere, and I left the audio filter on, and then all my Premiere sound was overcompressed, and I was looking at it and I was going, this isn't right. The volume isn't. It's too much compression, but I couldn't figure out what had changed. And then I was like, forget it. I'm never turning that filter on in OBS ever again. So that's why I'm quieter today. But I fixed it. I turned myself up. Great. We ready?
We are.
What do we got this week, Blunty?
Before we get into it, I think we should just say that the DRL Championship has happened.
Yes.
And we have a winner.
We have a winner. And my hometown of Knoxville, Tennessee, has a winner.
Yes, we do. Evan Turner. Congratulations to Evan Turner from Knoxville for winning this year's DRL championship.
Indeed. A little bit of a weird championship because of the disease which shall not be named. It was all virtual, right? They didn't do any live races. It was all online. But
Right.
in some sense, I guess that makes it harder. But Evan won it. So
Yeah, that's
very
awesome.
proud of him.
Cool. So let's run down the show notes. Today, we're going to talk about some Insta360 choices that may not be the best choices in the world. They possibly have a GPL violation. We're going to talk a little bit about that and some choices with image cropping, output, bitrate, all kinds of stuff we'll dig into.
Yep.
Somebody's broken in the code and check that out. So.
Yeah. Insta360 maybe playing some shenanigans with their specs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very disappointing.
And
Insta360.
we're going to do a little sub 250 gram breakdown with some long range stuff. We do some 4-inch, 5-inch, 1-inch, all kinds of stuff. Go through all those different products from Ummagawd, DaveC, and another guy on RC groups.
Yep. Sub 250 really taken off. Even larger quads like 4-inch and 5-inch. So we're going to do a little rundown of some of the developments in that area.
We've got some Mississippi drone laws to watch for. Now, this is mainly going to affect you if you're in Mississippi, but I think this is pretty important for people to understand kind of where local laws are going and where states are trying to move stuff. And, maybe we can let people in Mississippi know about this, and then also people in other areas can see where things are going to end up possibly. So
Yeah.
where government can go.
Yeah.
We've got an update on the DJI Goggles V2, just a couple little items there. We'll talk about those. Possibly showing up in some patch notes.
Yeah, and a hint that DJI may have listened to the negative feedback that came when the Goggles V2 released early for like one day, and then DJI yanked it back and said, "Take it out of the store." And we're like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Maybe they listened to some of the feedback.
Gemfan's already got new version of the Moonlight LED props, so we'll talk about a couple changes they've made based on user feedback.
Yep, I have those.
The FETTEC FC now supports the VTX power rail, 14-volt power rail, in addition to the 5-volt that was always on it. We'll talk about why I care a lot about that.
Everyone here who's running a FETTEC flight controller, raise your hand. In the chat.
So we'll do our community spotlight. So we'll talk about a 3D printed folding TPU holder for Crossfire for some different Crossfire devices. It's a pretty clever little device.
Yeah, cool.
We'll talk about a Chilean Navy helicopter pilot that was hit by a Mavic Air 2 through the windshield, which is pretty crazy, I think.
Yeah, in kind of a worst case scenario for a drone / aircraft impact, but we'll take a look at some of the pictures of that and talk about how that happened and what it could mean.
And we'll cap off with a PBS Terra episode on drone racing with Jordan Temkin Jet, also from DRL fame.
Yeah, cool. I've watched some of this. It's pretty slick. Maybe we'll show some of it, maybe not because of the copyright implications, but anyway, did the helicopter crash? You'll have to stick around and watch the whole stream to find out. Yeah, that's why we put that one at the end of the stream. But let's start off with a discussion of this Insta360 thing. And Blunty, I think there's two aspects of this that we got to talk about. One is some shenanigans with the specs, that it's not outputting maybe the resolutions and bit rates that it says it does. And then the second piece is related to the GPL. I think you should take the first one, and then I'm going to rant about the second one, and we'll just sort of play it that way. What do you say? So let me put
It works for me.
I'm going to put the show notes up on screen because there's some details here that are a little weird. Actually, let me put this Reddit thread up on screen. There's some details here that are a little weird, and you may want to read them. Here we go.
Yeah, so let's talk about what happened. Basically, this user went in and reverse engineered the code. It's pretty simple. He just pulled apart the code and looked at what libraries they were using, what they were calling, what some of the basic instructions were. And his deductions were that only 2 sensors are called in all of the Insta360 code. And so he reviewed the different sensor options. There's a the IMX 283, which is a 1-inch sensor, and a 577, which is the other sensors. So basically, to break it down, there's a couple different situations in which you're not going to get what you expect, and maybe that's good or bad based on how you look at the situation. So in one of these situations, you have 4K 30p 4x3. That's going to come out to 4,000 by 3,000, and that's going to be 100 megabit per second. But if you set the camera to 16 by 9, you're going to get the same, basically exact thing out of the camera. And that means when you crop to 16 by 9, you're going to get 2/3 of the bitrate that you expected.
Yeah, and some of this, we talked about some of this before the stream, and I think some of this is because Insta360's workflow is that of a 360 cam. And this doesn't fully explain everything he saw, but the workflow of a 360 cam is that they output the full 360 video, and then in post-processing, you crop it down and reframe it as you see fit. And Insta360 uses that same logic even when you're using their action cam mod. You still get a full... So, for example, if you set it to narrow field of view, the file it outputs has the full wide field of view, but then in the Insta360 app, you can frame it down however you see fit. And I think that might explain some of the choices, like you set it to 16:9 resolution, but you still get the full 4,000 by 3,000 resolution out, or does it? What do you think?
Yes. Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think it's just different for people's workflow, because the comparison is that somebody's going to look at is a 4K 30 16 by 9 on a GoPro. And what a GoPro does is it crops the sensor before it renders you out the MP4 on the GoPro. And that means that you're getting a 100 megabit per second 16 by 9 4K 30 image. On this camera, because it crops after the video is rendered at 100 megabit per second for the 4x3 4,000 by 3,000 file, then you're only getting 66 megabits instead of 100 megabits. I think it may not affect a lot of users, and it depends on how much data you have in the picture as to how much you're even going to see that. But I do think it's important for people to at least understand that there's a difference as a base here from these action cams to something like a GoPro standard. Yeah.
A lot of people would think that if you put the 4K mod on the Insta360 One R, that it would act just like a regular action cam, and it's really not. It's acting like a 360 cam. And one of the downsides of a 360 cam is if it's got, let's say, 5K resolution, that's 5K resolution spread over, I think it's 5K per sensor, so it's 180 degree field of view. So that 5K it's spread thinner than you would expect, and by the time you crop it down to a reasonable field of view, you do not have even 1080 resolution effectively. And most people wouldn't expect that from their action cam. But there's more here. Like, there's some other weird stuff that I don't think is fully explained by that. Like, what's going on here with this 2.7K 60 versus 2.7K 30 resolution thing?
Yeah, so it seems like what's happening, I think this is sort of similar, but maybe not. Basically what they've done, it seems like, is they're downscaling from 4K for 60 frames. So if you do a 2.7K 60, 2.7K 60 is going to downscale to 3072 by 1728. But it's, for some reason, it tells you, and it's going to pull out of that file a 2720 by 1530. When you actually get it to your end file, when you render it out of the Insta360 software. Mm-hmm. Also, the very weird thing is that if you bring that down to 30 frames, it's going to give you more resolution up to 2304. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that's a 4:3 aspect ratio. So again, it's going to crop down the 16:9, and it actually is only going to give you 50 megabits instead of 100 megabits on this file. It seems like maybe this is actually a bug in the way they're handling some of the cropping.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
Yeah, and as the user points out in this Reddit post, this could easily be fixed by just taking the crops like on the raw file and then giving you the Insta360 file with it pre-cropped. And then they could give you full bitrate. You still have freedom to do any other changes to it. You just can't do the Insta360 kind of move around or fix the jostle or things like that you might be able to do otherwise.
Yeah, so the takeaway, by the way, I see some chatter in the chat about what camera is affected. This is the Insta360 One R and the SMO 4K. So even if you're not into the Insta360 One R, a lot of people who are considering the SMO 4K for a sort of naked GoPro action, more on that on my OnlyFans. The SMO 4K is affected here. My takeaway on this is, number one, the specifications should be accurate and honest, and if they're not, that's an issue. Number two, if there's a bug, then that needs to be fixed. And number three, I think a lot of people are still going to use these cameras because at the end of the day, what else out there competes with the SMO 4K? A naked GoPro that you have to tear apart yourself? Some people are fine with that. Some people aren't. And the image quality is not as good as GoPro. We've always said that. But it's good enough for some applications.
Sure. I think for a lot of users, yeah, like you said, it's not going to be a huge deal. It's just something for people to understand what they're going to get out of the camera. I think it is important to have an idea of that. But, I think for a lot of users, and certainly for me, and I know for you, the next thing, the other issue, is kind of quite a bit bigger here. And
it is. So when this guy on Reddit unpacked this firmware file, the other thing he found, so basically this camera is basically running Linux. Essentially, it's just a computer, little microcomputer, and it's running, I think it's running a Linux build or a Unix build or something.
It's calling libraries from Linux, I believe is what he found.
And these libraries are open source, and they're licensed under the GNU public license, the GPL. And long story short, the GPL, the way it works is anyone can use these libraries. Anyone can, in fact, sell them and make money off of them. You can incorporate them into a commercial product. There's nothing wrong with that. But the GPL requires that if you do that, you must also make your code available to other people under the GPL. It's kind of like, I don't know what a good analogy is. Like once you get sort of infected by GPL code, your whole project, essentially, I'm greatly oversimplifying, GPL experts.
Well, I mean, there's another parallel in the farming industry. I come from, a plant background. The same thing happens with GMO crops. If some of the pollen gets on the wind and then pollutes some of your crops with the pollen, and you get seeds that contain the GMO genetics in them from the pollen, suddenly now you are responsible for having those GMO genetics in your seeds, and you can't grow them without paying money to Monsanto or GMO company.
Sure, but the difference here is that the GPL code didn't get in here by accident. They took it, they incorporated it. And once they did that, they had a legal and moral and ethical obligation because these guys built these, and this is why I get so pissed off about GPL violations. These guys who build these GPL products are doing it, they're doing so much work. And they do it and they put it out into the world and they say, anyone may use this. I am not going to make money off of it, even though they probably could make a lot of money off of it if they decided to. And then for someone else to take that and go, thank you so much, and then lock it away and not sort of pay it forward feels really wrong to me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. Here's the state of it as it currently stands. So the way the GPL works is, you must, I believe you must make the code available like upon request, or do you need to publish it? All I know is that they have requested officially that Insta360 give them the source code for their Insta360 camera as they're obligated to do under the GPL. And if they don't do that, then they'll definitely be in violation and maybe even subject to legal action or fines from someone.
I'm not sure where they're located or exactly like how, what that would fall under, what laws kind of like, I don't know enough about GPL to go down that road. But what I would say is I think the traditional thing you do here is you either have to open source it, or you have to rewrite all the code, basically. So you rewrite it so you don't include the libraries, you build your own versions of the libraries, stuff like that. But the issue is going to be that they already have products out in the wild. And I think the golden rule is that once you flash it onto something and sell it, I think that's where it becomes an issue. That was my understanding.
I want to acknowledge that neither Blunty nor I are experts on the GPL, and that in fact the GPL has a lot of nuances and intricacies that people who are experts still argue over. So we're doing a little bit of a gloss over for this news segment. Frank Nicholas in the chat says, if they are only using and calling the GPL libraries, then they only have to announce that they're using the library, not actually open their source code. I do know there is some rules about calling a library versus incorporating the code in your own source, and there's some debate over exactly where that line is. So maybe they don't have to open their code, but it doesn't seem like it's up for debate that they are currently not in compliance because nobody knew that they were doing this until now. Dominic Clifton, who knows probably as much about the GPL as anybody, says you need to make your code available to anyone that requests it. You only need to publish your code if you distribute it, which they have. So, right, they're distributing their code in the camera, at which point they're supposed to be publishing their code. But the question of whether it's libraries or not. So, I don't know if yeah.
I would urge everyone to go to the Reddit thread. We've linked everything down under the under this video, so you can see. If you go down to the comments, he's actually got a list of all the libraries, the binaries, the different things he found that he thought were a violation or he thought were an issue. So you can make your own judgment call on that one. I guess is probably the best thing to do there.
I would say that I feel strongly enough about this that if they really are just blatantly violating the GPL, it pains me to say this, but I would probably blacklist them, or at least the products that are in violation. I was extremely annoyed and extremely vocal when I thought that Flight 1 or Race Flight had violated the GPL by rewriting Flight 1 from GPL code in secret in a very short amount of time. I didn't believe that they'd done it, and I thought they were in violation by not publishing their source. I was very vocal about that and very annoyed. And I don't see why that stance should change if it's Insta360, even though they make the SMO 4K, which is really a nice camera, and they've been very good to FPV. So I feel really conflicted about this. But anyway, Beard Tech agrees. If Insta360 is calling libraries, they only have to say that they're calling the libraries. They don't have to release their source. I would love for that to be true, and I would love for them to go, oh, hey, sorry, guys, we effed up. Yeah, we're using these libraries. Now we're in compliance. Now we're golden, and then I would feel great again. I mean, I guess they violated in the past, but I would probably be willing to forgive that, personally.
I will say as well that, through this guy and a few other people did a rough check through the Insta360 website, and there is no mention of GPL. So if they are calling the libraries, they should at least be saying that, I do believe.
Yeah. So Insta360, I don't know what you need to do, but make it right, because I'm going to be really conflicted about whether to just not talk about your products anymore if you're violating the GPL. I know that sounds like a stupid hill to die on, but the GPL, and we're gonna move on. Yeah. We've talked about this for like 15 minutes. The GPL to me feels like such a pure and good thing. I know programmers who work within the GPL sometimes get it annoying and get in arguments about it, but at its heart, the GPL is, I made this thing, I am going to give it to the world for free for everyone to use and benefit from. And so much of this work is so integral and so useful in so many ways. And when somebody starts to threaten that by abusing it, I just am like, no, do not mess up the one good thing that's still in the world. We need this in 2021. Okay. Anything more to say about that, Blunty?
No, I think we covered it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sub250. Sub250. Yeah. There's a lot going on in the Sub250 world, Blunty. Where do you want to start?
There is this news, a lot of news this week. So let's talk about Sub250 JetFPV. A member of the community. He has a 249 gram all-up weight, 3S 3000 milliamp hour lithium-ion, 4-inch frame, bi-blade, DJI, that he says pushes 35 to 40 minute flight times and can fly 3 miles and back.
Yeah.
Pretty freaking cool.
And my first thought when I saw this was, well, how's that any different from the Flywheel Explorer? But the Flywheel Explorer and those other Sub250 4-inches that I reviewed, they're not under 250 by the time you put a 3S lithium ion on them. They're over 250. So to get that 35, 40 minute flight time, you can't do that on those guys if you're under 250. This might be the longest flying Sub250, or certainly in contention for it. It's insane.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, seems super neat. And I believe everything here is off-the-shelf parts, except for his frame. Sub250 JetFPV actually has this alpha frame that he designed and cut himself. Yeah, seems like a pretty cool little project. Tackle on the list of things you can fly under 250 grams.
Yeah. Is this something that's for sale somewhere? Or is it just...
I don't think so. He's got a list of all the things on that Instagram there, and then he also made a post on FPV Cycle. So
that Instagram link is down in the video description. The show notes are down there, so you can check all the links that we're going to out. So congratulations to Sub250 GFPV. That is an incredible achievement. It's an incredible achievement. All right. Well, in the same line, if you want a Sub250 3S, check out that one. But this is a Sub250 1S. That's right. DaveC, the guy who came up with the Flywoo, well, the quad that the Flywoo Explorer was based on, DaveC, the guy who basically started the whole Sub250 4-inch trend, at least the commercial version of it, has a Sub250 1S that he's working on. Where's the link to the actual... It's at the very beginning here. Here we go. There it is. And now you can see it fly, but I think I'd rather just freeze on that picture.
If you click on to his Instagram there, he's got a picture of it right before that.
All right, hang on. There it is. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. There we go. Yeah, so, yeah.
He's still tweaking it. He's still making sure, it all works out for him. He's not perfectly happy with it yet, but he says right now he's got a lithium-ion charge to 4 volts and at 0 degrees Celsius outside where he has to test. He's getting 15 minutes on 1S with just a step up BEC, I think. So seems like a pretty neat project. As always, he's pushing the limits.
That's just crazy. Those little spindly arms, like how does it crash? I can't even imagine. But just the ability to fly on 1S like this, a 1S 18650, it's just insane.
Yep, I don't believe he's given weights yet either on that one. Yeah, he's been working on this for a while though.
Sub250 though, right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Ryan Makhmutov, the links are in the video description below the video on YouTube. That's where we put all the show notes and the links. All right, DaveC continuing to push the limits. What's next? We got another Sub250 long range, don't we?
Yeah, we've actually got another 1S long range quadcopter option. Somebody else has done this a different way. Instead of going the DaveC route with the custom frames and stuff, he's actually gone kind of a collab here with Emax and FPV Cycle parts. So he's put together with the new Nanohawk board a long range 1S. And he's actually doing 1S 3P or 1S 2P with 600 milliamp hour battery. You can
kind of see it here. 3 stacked for those 600 milliamp hour, you said?
Yeah, so 600.
Total of 1800 milliamp hour 1S in parallel with a little.
So flight times are definitely not as good on this. And this is analog, so we're getting like 7 to 12 minutes on 1S 2P. I think it's like more like 15 to 18 minutes on 1S 3P, so it's getting pretty close to that the DaveC length of time. So it's cool to see some different people pushing this side of things.
This looks more like a toothpick. I guess a Nanohawk. This doesn't look like the Nanohawk frame, though, does it? That's like a toothpick frame, isn't it?
It's Bob's FPV Cycle, the baby tooth.
The baby tooth,
frame.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Skadoosh points out that none of these are truly long range. Well, I guess it just depends on how you are modifying the term. It is a long range 4-inch. See, it's long range for a 4-inch. It's not a 4-inch long range. It's a long range 4-inch. I don't know. I'm just yeah, you're right. These aren't truly long range, but they are long range for what you got. And there's one more Sub250, and this one is potentially going to challenge me to eat my words. But if anybody out there could make me eat my words, there's nobody I would be happier to feed them to me than Tommy Tabahia. Ummagawd. I have said for a while, I tried some Sub250 5-inch quads. The Beta FPV X-Night, I think, was one of them. I tried a few of them. I felt like you were giving up way too much in terms of durability, fiddly performance, and maybe even flight characteristics. And I just basically wrote off the whole Sub250 5-inch category as not worth it. But Tommy Tabahia has been working on the 250, like 350, 250. Let me zoom out here. This is his new ultralight freestyle frame, and he's working on a whole sub 250 gram 5-inch freestyle build. What do you think about this frame, Blunty, compared to like the traditional, like the X-Night and the other toothpick style frames?
Yeah, I think to me this is kind of like a sort of like the hybrid, you know, like you're trying to get the best of both worlds. So you kind of like hit a toothpick. If you get like on the closer shot, you can almost see like the arm go through. It seems like they hid a toothpick inside of like a real frame, you know. So they took like just a little as little bit of top and bottom plate as you need. You get that front protection for the camera, so you can put a decent little camera up front and not worry about breaking it. And then, you know, otherwise you just are basically flying a toothpick.
What I like about this is those toothpick style frames like the X-Night, you basically have to build everything in one stack, and it gets really fiddly and tricky to build. And I feel like it's really fragile because as soon as you take a hit, just the stack standoffs, the screws are holding everything together. Sometimes you stuff something in a canopy, but it's just not my favorite way of building. Whereas this one is going to build out more like a traditional freestyle quad. You're going to have the VTX in the back, the flight controller in the center, the camera up front, the battery on top, and there's something going on there. Yeah,
also they're quick swap arms, 4mm arms, so not bad for the size. There's a universal SC mounting, so you can do single board or a full stack, so it's not smashed, not slammed enough. For that to be a problem, you can do whoop size 20 or 30 by 30, 20 by 20, kind of everything there. So at least it covers the whole bases. It's meant to hold digital or analog, even though the size of the frame is what it is. You can put the battery on either side. Like, it's definitely a super versatile frame too.
Yeah, I mean, Tommy makes really good frame designs. There's no doubt. This guy's coming in around 50 grams, whereas, like, let me put up a picture of like the Beta FPV X. No, it's the Twig ET5. That's the one I'm thinking of. The Twig ET5 frame is a 5-inch toothpick frame, and you can see it's basically just like a little bit of carbon with a canopy. There's like nothing to it. Comes in at closer to 30 grams, so you got a little 20 grams more for this one, but you're getting a lot. The big question that everybody's asking is, number one, in the chat I see people discussing, is this going to fly like a bigger 5-inch?
Right, because like
physics.
It's just physics, right? There's something about thrust to weight and like disc size, and like there's all that is going to affect this. So unless you have the weight there, you're never going to feel like you have the weight there. I think that's just the case as long as you're on a 5-inch propeller.
Yeah, I mean the point of this is not to fly like a 5-inch. The point is to fly like a lightweight 5-inch, and there certainly are advantages to the larger props, even when the weight is low. The other question is the durability. Tommy showed some videos of him slamming it into a wall. And again, I'll say, if anybody could do it, he can. But I never trust the manufacturer's own torture tests. Sorry, Tommy. I believe you. I want you to be right. But I've seen too many cases where the manufacturer says, we ran it over with a truck and then had a T-Rex eat it and stomp on it and it's fine. And then they release it and people actually use it. And it just is like, So I'd love to see.
Yeah. As always, I'd love to see progression in the industry, though. Cool to see him pushing this. I know he's really psyched about Sub250. So
yeah. Some people in the Discord are wondering, where can we ask questions? I am monitoring the Discord chat, but it isn't a Q&A live stream. We don't take as many questions here as on my other live streams. It's more than news. But I am keeping an eye on you guys and watching your comments. Never fear. If the stream froze, just reload the stream. Everything's fine on our end. Yeah. Okay. So looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out in real life. We shall see. All right. Well, I think that's it for the Sub250s. What do we got next, Blunty?
Let's talk about Mississippi. If you're in Mississippi...
Let's talk about Mississippi, shall we? No, wait.
If you're in Mississippi, there are 2 laws you need to be aware of. And if you're not in Mississippi, it is likely that you need to pay attention to these laws and make notice of what people are trying to do in certain areas, right? So we've got 2 laws, one which will probably get knocked down and one which very well may go through. And so let's discuss those. So the first one is SB 2262. And so what they're trying to do is actually just straight up, they're trying to create ownership of airspace for landowners. They're literally trying to make it so that the landowners would have private airspace above their land that they could decide how to handle and what to do with. I think as most of us know, the FAA is not really chill with rules like that. So I don't think that we'll see that go through, but it is kind of disturbing that they're even trying to do that, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a principle then for those of you outside the United States, I think that for those of you outside of Mississippi and outside the United States, this is still 100% relevant. Vic Moss of the DSPA asked people to put the word out about this because he specifically wants activists and lawyers and whoever in Mississippi to fight this. But everyone in the United States and the world should be concerned about this because lots of states are trying to do BS like this. And as U.S. law goes, so goes a lot of the world, for better or for worse, at least with regards to drones. So there's this principle in federal law that says that only the federal government can regulate the airspace. And the idea is that the airspace is this giant common area and you can't have individual states. It would just be too much of a patchwork of laws to really work. And you might say, well, I mean, the highways and roads have state laws and that works. Yeah, but like planes cross every state all the time. It would be too much. So it is explicitly illegal for the state of Mississippi to try to regulate and say, for example, private airspace is a thing. But unfortunately, the FAA has not been very active about enforcing that and actually getting their lawyers out and saying, no, you can't do this to states.
Yeah. So we'll see, if that actually goes through. It might be struck down even before it actually, starts to go through the process, but it is up to be a law. I think that's a Senate bill currently. And then there's also a House bill, HB 291. I think this is the one that's a little more disturbing for people. So basically, this bill would make it unlawful if someone unknowingly uses a drone to conduct surveillance of, collect information of data, or photographically or electronically record a critical infrastructure or a correctional facility without prior written consent of the owner. Now, the issue is, that sounds great, critical infrastructure. Okay, cool. We don't want military shit being taken images of, like that makes sense, right? However, they're defining critical infrastructure as to include any structure that provides wire or wireless communication, commercial transport, vessel operating in any inland waterway or ocean, so no boats, no ports, railroad switch yards, trucking terminals, freight transportation facilities, or any other facility completely enclosed by a fence or physical barrier. So essentially, anywhere becomes critical infrastructure the way this law is written.
Right.
And they can kick you out of anywhere and say it's unlawful for you to be there with the drone.
Yeah. This one I think is a little trickier, and I'm not a lawyer, so obviously, take that for what it's worth. But you can't regulate the airspace, but they certainly can regulate. Well, one of the things they've done is they regulate takeoff and landing. They can regulate the possession of a drone, right? They can't stop you from flying in the airspace, but if you are on the ground, they can regulate your behavior and legislate your behavior. And certainly they can ask you to leave. We've seen laws like this. I think Texas made a law which made it specifically illegal to take photos of feedlots. There were animal rights activists taking photos of feedlots and showing the conditions the animals were in. Please, chat, let's not go that direction. We're not going to debate that. We're just talking about drones here. I don't think the Texas law specifically pertained to drones. They just said it was illegal to take video of the feedlots and other types of infrastructure, but drones certainly were included. And I worry that that kind of law actually is not clearly illegal and might actually go through if it isn't fought.
Sure. I think one of the scariest things about things like this too are that when you get blanket laws, I guess you would call them, like where you just start to, say like any other facility, like that is a worrisome phrase to say.
Anything enclosed by a fence? Is that what it said?
Right. Yeah. Or any other facility completely enclosed by a fence or physical barrier, or any other facility marked with a sign or signs that are posted on the property. It's literally just anywhere that they want to keep you
Right.
out of. And
Yeah.
when you start blanketing laws like that, I think you get away from public safety and helping things and stopping surveillance, and you start restricting like people's freedoms and things because you're not paying attention to something that's wrong. You're just like picking out something and wiping it across without like a second thought, you know.
It's also worth mentioning that these ideas have been tested in court before. The concept of reasonable expectation of privacy. The question of if I am standing on a public street and I am taking a photograph of a person and your house is in the background and you're standing in the window naked for whatever reason, have I violated your privacy? These questions have all been broached before and answered. And the fact that this is being done with a drone doesn't really fundamentally change the question, in my opinion. And so it feels like this is trying to extend this stuff in ways that haven't been before. So if you're in Mississippi, or if you know somebody in Mississippi who's an aviation lawyer or any kind of activist or anything, don't let this one slip, because it's going to be bad. So
yeah, have them call their senator or congressman.
Yeah. All right, Vic Moss, thanks for the heads up on that. Let's talk about our favorite topic, Blunty. The topic that in some ways has to this day defined our live stream. The DJI Goggles V2. Oh, yay! Yeah. There's a little bit of news about the DJI Goggles V2. The first one is that the DJI Goggles V2 have shown up in the release notes for the DJI FPV Assistant app. Some people have wondered, is it real? Are they real? What about the leaks? The FCC documents pretty much put that to rest, I think. But if you needed any more confirmation, the DJI FPV app will have support for the FPV Goggles V2. They definitely exist, and they are definitely coming probably soon. Well, otherwise, why would it be in there? The other thing that I think is interesting is, so a little bit of history. A couple weeks ago, DJI said to the stores, you can go ahead and sell the Goggle V2. And all the stores opened up pre-sales. And then that one day later, DJI said, stop selling them. And all the stores closed the pre-sales. And some people, there was a lot of negative feedback to some aspects of the goggles. People wanted them to be more updated, but they kind of weren't, right? Did you see that as well?
For sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people complained just that it was a small update. I think people wanted to see changes in the size of the goggles and see the antennas move so they don't break off as easy, and just a lot of user convenience things. And also, I think a lot of people wanted OLED, and just they weren't overall. I think a lot of people weren't happy with where they came out because I think they expected more than we got.
Yeah, and my take on it is that the DJI Goggles V2, from an FPV perspective, they were not really an update at all. That the main reason they released the Goggle V2 is because of the leaked drone, that they wanted that to be compatible with the drone that's leaked and confirmed by FCC filings. So my acknowledging its existence is not violating an NDA. But FPV pilots basically didn't get anything from the Goggle V2. Okay, they got USB video out to a smartphone. That is a thing that we will like. And they were like, well, geez, DJI. So somebody emailed me and said he got a survey from DJI, and he sent me a link to the survey, and it said, you have already completed this survey, because he completed it. So I can't confirm this, but he said he got a survey from DJI, and the survey basically said, hey, we heard you thought the DJI Goggle V2 was shitty. What kind of things would you like us to do in the real V2 that we're going to start working on right now? Things like, they asked about, internal antennas, smaller form factor, etc., etc. So that's kind of weird.
Here's what I'll say. I said this like a long time ago, like one of our earlier episodes. I think still that the plan is that DJI is going to do an enterprise push, right? So like you're going to see like the drone will come out that looks like it's going to be for like not us. So it's like prosumer enterprise, the same thing I said. So it's going to be, and then they're going to make a DJI Goggles Pro that like has OLED. I don't know this, I don't know anything, but like I think to me it looks like DJI Goggles Pro would come out, right? So an actual better upgraded version that they can actually charge $200 more for the SKU. Because I think the issue is if you, like we talked about before, if you brought out an OLED goggle for the V2 and then tried to bring it out at the same price, I think they would either lose money or they'd have to jack it up, and then people would be mad because now there's no option to buy anything else. If you now have the V2 SKU and then in 6 months you bring out a Pro SKU, now you have a SKU for two different kinds of people, and then you can push that one to the enterprise market and the other to the FPV base market. That's what I would do, or that's what I would think is happening. And this kind of makes sense with a user getting a survey about like, what should we actually do when we make better goggles?
So we have people in the chat saying they also got the survey. If anybody gets this survey and can document the actual questions that are being asked, because you can't see the survey after you filled it out. But if anybody wants to screenshot the questions, I would love to know what they are asking. I think the existence of this survey seems to confirm, Blunty, that they noticed the negative feedback. People said maybe they yanked the goggles because of the negative feedback, and I was like, give me a break, DJ. It feels like that might be true. And maybe you're right, Blunty, that they will release an upgraded version with some additional features at some point in the future.
Yeah, that's what I would expect to see. But, you know, who knows? Hopefully everybody will start getting V2s pretty soon. I will say I didn't pull it for this, but they're on one of the FPV Facebook groups. Somebody did show in China that they got a V2 goggle, and they're just an end user. So they were able to purchase it in China. So there is at least some going around out of factories and stuff. And I've heard there are some shipments that got sent to the U.S., but then they got rejected, and customs is having issues, and shipping's a mess. So there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, one of the retailers. Yeah, one of the retailers on I think TPS Lounge or one of the other places said in a comment that they were supposed to receive a shipment and they got notification from customs that it had been rejected.
Oh, wow. Yeah, some of the people who took pre-orders for during that one-day window said they expected to fill the pre-orders in the next few weeks, and I was like, interesting. And now maybe they won't be if they're getting rejected at customs.
Yeah, I would like to correct one thing real quick. There is a common link that's been sent around in the community. It's basically store.dji.com/SG and then the product of the goggles. And that's a Singapore link. So what happens is when you click on that link, if you haven't assigned a location to DJI, it will move you over to Singapore, but show you US price, like USD as price. But it will give you the price in Singapore. So people are seeing $679 on that and thinking like, oh, it's going to be more expensive. My understanding is some DJI products are more expensive in Singapore. And so, you're seeing this because you're clicking that link and then you're going to a Singapore version of the link. If you click up top, you can go to the United States and it'll tell you it's not available. I think that's because they don't actually have the US and standard prices set yet. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's exciting. A lot of people are saying they received this survey, by the way. Again, I'd love to see screen grabs of the actual questions. If anyone can email them to me, that'd be great. I think that this is just another positive sign. I'm going to keep saying this until eventually DJI stabs us in the back, and then I'll be like, damn it. But they keep doing things that show that they seem to actually care what we want from goggles. And when the V2 came out and it didn't have a lot of the things that we would have liked, some people were like, here it comes. And I said, well, I think they're just not, they're just thinking about their new drone right now. They're just not thinking about us much. I'm sure they'll get back around to us. And the existence of this survey seems to indicate that that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think a real big sign of this will be like post-Chinese New Year when the drone ships. What do these firmware updates look like for the goggles? Do we finally get more OSD elements? Do we finally get like MSP DisplayPort implementation from DJI so we can just use whatever OSD element? Like there's so many things that like, little tweaks that we have all asked for, like fixing the SD card slow error. I've heard there's a beta test of firmware on the air unit for that. So I'd love to see all that come to fruition.
So you're saying the drone won't ship till after Chinese New Year? How do you know that?
That is Aceta LV put that on. That's my understanding. I'll be happy to tell people that. That's been my understanding.
I'm not saying anything about the release date.
Gotcha. I would expect the drone after Chinese New Year.
I will say this. I have the drone. I don't think that's a secret. I've had the Goggles V2. I have a few other things. I've been testing them and working on getting ready to review them. and watching people all over the internet say things about them with so much certainty, and me knowing whether they're right or wrong, is filling me with so much dread for every time there's a product that I'm not involved with, and I go out there and I'm like, yeah, I think it's gonna be blue with 16 antennas, and it sounds good, and somewhere I'm just like, oh my god, I should never doing that again. Anyway, let's move on. What's next, Blunty? What is next?
The Gemfan Moonlight LED props V2 have been released. They have taken your feedback and they have made them brighter they basically changed the LED to be the same color. Previously, the LED was white that shined down the edges. So if you had like a colored prop, it was just shining with the white through the prop. Now it's a color LED that matches the color, so they you get extra reflectivity or whatever. And then they've also added an on-off switch by popular demand, so you can actually turn these on and off without removing the battery. So just a couple improvements for people, but it's pretty quick how fast they turn these around, and they've actually made a video to show the reason they changed it and what the changes are. So I think that's pretty consumer positive, I would say.
Yeah. They actually shipped me a batch of the V1s, and I was like, okay, I'll work on the video. And they were like, actually, we're going to release the V2s. Why don't you wait? So I actually have the V2s. I got them just about a week ago, last week, and they're on the calendar, on my editorial calendar to review. So I'll be checking them out. Pretty slick. Pretty slick. Thank you, Dhar Jono, for screenshotting the survey. Thank you so much for that. You have not seen any NDA stuff in the background, Mr. Eddie Nunez. I assure you, you have not. I will say, there was one video I shot, and it was that camera, and there was something on the floor behind me, just barely in the view. And I was like, oh shit, and I zoomed in a little bit on the camera so you couldn't see it. So, but I guarantee you, you have not seen anything NDA in the live stream or anything like that. No, sir. No, sir. Exploding Evo says, in response to me having the product, cue Christian Bale clip. Oh, good for you. All right, Blunty, you got to do this next one. This is, you care so much about this next one. I'm just going to shut up.
I care enough to make sure it's in the show, that's for sure. So if you've used the FETTEC flight controller, you might be aware that the FETTEC flight controller has the tiniest 5-volt rail of anything. And they expect you to run a VTX and a receiver off that 5-volt rail, so you can't. Most people just can't. And you run a receiver off the 5-volt, and then you run your VTX off VBAT or wherever else. You've got to find a solution for the VTX for everything else you want to power. Well, they've listened to your argument. They've listened to what you said, and they've added a 14-volt rail now that's optional for the VTX pad. So now you could actually have 14-volt 1-amp rail for VTX or whatever else needs power on a FETTEC FC. You won't fry it. You won't make mistakes if you're a new person. You don't have to find a VBAT solution. I think that's pretty cool. This is a direct upgrade from talking to consumers and users, and I think it's pretty neat. So
yeah, it's always good when vendors listen to their customers and give them what they want. Certainly, some people might ask, if you've got a VBAT powered video transmitter, why would you want to power it? Why don't you just power it from VBAT? And I think the answer is that a filtered 14-volt regulator is going to have cleaner video.
Yes, that will also have a closer common ground. It might not go through a dirty source and stuff like that.
Andrew Young in the chat says, all 3 FETTEC flight controller users are jumping up and down in their chairs. 4. Blunty's one.
As Flat FPV says, only 3 smart people here.
Omar Hughes asks, isn't 14 volts overshooting it a lot for VTX voltage? Yeah, I don't know. That's an odd choice, Omar. I do agree. These days, any VTX that supports VBAT will take 14 volts. It'll go, they're typically like 7 to 26 volts because they want to be 2 to 6S. So typically you would want the lower voltage because lower voltage will give you more filtering. But I'm going to guess that FETTEC knows what they're doing. They typically don't just make dumb decisions.
And I don't know for sure. I do know that they're calling this a pretty beefy BAC, it's going to be the full 1 amp. So in theory, you could run DJI on it. I'm not,
Good point. You need about 10 watts to run DJI. Yeah. And that means that 14 volts times 1 amp is 14 watts. So you have a little bit of overhead. Maybe that's why they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Next up is the community spotlight, where we focus on a product or project that is somebody in the community is doing that we think deserves a little attention. And this one is a clever way of mounting your Crossfire receiver. Although he says Crossfire, but I think they got them for, no, it's just Crossfire, but presumably there will be more. And basically, it is a 30 by 30. This is TPU, so it's flexible. A 30 by 30 mount that kind of folds over the receiver. What do you think of this, Blunty?
Yeah, I think this is really smart to me. This seems super smart. I mean, most people are taping down or tying down or using VHB. You know, you're doing something to split out your flight controller or to tie down your antenna or things like that. And yeah, this is, I think, a pretty cool solution. So you don't have to do that. You can kind of nix the taper and nix the VHB, have a nice little mounting solution wherever you want to put it. So there's these, and then I've got one more link in the show notes. It's also a one for the mini. There you go, for the Mini Mortal. I think that's like super smart. It's just like, you know, ties right in there. And the other thing I would say is like any that aren't here, you know, now this concept is kind of in people's heads. So maybe we'll see more of those. Yeah, seems pretty cool.
XT60
This is from,
out the back. Interesting.
We should say this is from License to Drive in the chat, or Ridwan Hughes. This is his project.
Nice. I'm not so sure about this XT60 mounting. I've always been suspicious of a XT60 that's secured like this. In my experience, on a bad crash where the battery yanks out, it can, well, I mean, I guess if it's completely enclosed by the TPU, I guess it's not going to get damaged. But I've seen the XT60 connectors get damaged when they're not allowed to move in a crash. Right. It seems pretty clever, though. This looks like a pretty good design. So,
yeah.
Thank you to Ridwan Hughes or Haku3D, I assume that's the same person, for these cool little projects. Callisto says, I don't really want the stack taller, though. Well, I mean, the 20 by 20 mounting you could put on the rear 20 by 20 that a lot of frames have. So, yeah. All that TPU looks nice, but it does raise the weight. Change agent is 100% right. It will add weight. I'd be curious how the weight compares to something like tape and a zip tie, though. I bet it's a little more.
Sure.
Cool.
All right.
Well, now we get to the most controversial topic of the news, right, Blunty?
Yes, for sure. But it is interesting to see what can happen. And yeah, so this is a Chilean Navy helicopter. And the pilot was actually physically struck through the windshield of a helicopter, through a plexiglass windshield by a Mavic Air 2. Unfortunately, the information for this is kind of rough because it was in Chile. So it's hard to know exactly what happened. We don't have like a height. There wasn't actually an official height yet listed. There wasn't an actual official like super official crash report. We just know that the drone was found inside of the cockpit when the pilot landed, and the pilot was okay. He was bleeding, but the pilot and the passenger landed safely.
Bobby Baggs in the chat says, I think the helicopter ran into the drone. Yeah, I mean, you have two vehicles moving, one at a faster speed. Which one hit the other is kind of moot.
Sure.
Ultimately, when there's a midair collision, somebody's at fault. And at least in the United States, it is always the responsibility of the unmanned aircraft, the drone, to see and avoid the manned aircraft. Since this was a Navy helicopter, it's certainly possible that it was flying at a low altitude, and the drone may have thought it was safe for being under 400 feet. Again, I'm just totally speculating. Nevertheless, whoever was flying this drone is in big freaking trouble. Thank God, you know, I don't know.
It just is another good example to say, like, he did not, where they are in Chile, they do need a number on the drone, and he did not have one. So they can't find him. They're looking through the SD card to see if they can locate him through images or the serial number on the drone to see who purchased it. But this is another example of how, like, this regulation, like, is great for people, but the people who are going to do things like this are not going to put their number on the drone so you can find them.
Yeah. There's people in the chat who are certainly raising some questions, and of course, we don't have the answers to the questions.
Sure.
Some people are asking, how did the drone not get knocked out of the way by the helicopter's downdraft? I don't know. Presumably, if the helicopter's, I mean, the downdraft is very significant, but the helicopter may also have been moving quickly, and there just may not have been time for it to get out of the way. For all we know, the drone got sucked down through the downdraft and into the. We just don't know. There's always people who are questioning. They're like, "Oh, are these pictures fake?" I don't know. But of all the incidents I've heard of where people are like, I saw a drone outside my aircraft window, and it's like, yeah, it's just made up. In this case,
Right.
we have an aircraft, we have a hole in the windshield, and we have a drone that is said to have come down inside the cockpit. And like, it's not good. So I guess what we need to say is that if you are flying, you need to see and avoid manned aircraft, and even if you think you're flying in an area where manned aircraft shouldn't be, you know, hey, when Navy helicopter comes zooming through, you need to get out of the way. How would a Mavic Air break through plexiglass? Asks Cannon Hughes. Cannon, I have no freaking idea, dude. I have no freaking idea.
I would think a Mavic Air. I would think that's plausible. It's 1.26 pounds is the weight they said when they finished it, and that Rotorriot video, they were bashing through windows pretty.
Well,
I mean,
those
you
were
there,
glass
right?
windows, to be fair. They were glass, not
Yeah.
plexiglass. I really don't know. I really don't know. I guess I really don't know. But
Well, yeah, but if you look, like, to me, if you look at the way the window broke, it certainly isn't like quality glass.
yeah, I think
Right?
maybe people may be making some assumptions about the type of plexiglass that may have been used on this helicopter.
Like there's no like fracture pattern to make sure that it doesn't like splinter or whatever. Like I don't know
Oh,
what
it's not
helicopters.
tempered or anything, or
Yeah, it's not tempered. Like I don't
double layer glass.
I don't know what they. Yeah, I don't know exactly how that works on a helicopter, what you're supposed to have, but I don't think it's maybe the same glass people are maybe thinking it is on a car or something.
Yeah, I don't know, but there you go. Yeah, that's. I think we're only going to see more of this as more drones get into the air. Thank God it wasn't in the United States. It would have been a disaster for the regulation and remote ID. But
People are saying the picture with the mask looks staged. Like, of course it's staged. It's a mask on the ground next to a broken drone they're taking a picture of for a news article.
Obviously,
like, yes,
or just
yes,
for documenting an incident.
Yeah, like, yes. Does not mean it's fake. It might be fake. Who knows? But yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that happened. All right. Well, I didn't want to finish on that. So we put one more news item in that is a happier, getting good news about FPV out to the public. I don't know, Blunty, have you watched the show PBS Terra before?
I've seen little clips, but I don't think I've ever spent too much time going through it.
Well, this is linked. This 8-minute clip is linked in the show notes. It is a really, I'm going to play I'm going to show you just a little bit of it, but I don't want to get a copy strike, so I don't want to show you too much of it. And I'm not going to use the audio. But this is Jordan Temkin, JetFPV, the DRL pilot, and they did a whole big segment about FPV drones. It's pretty freaking cool to see this stuff getting out into the world.
Yeah, this is another awesome opportunity for somebody to get explained drones and to learn. PBS is a cool channel, and I think this is just really neat that more people are getting into the FPV thing. This is a good intro for a lot of people who might not have seen it. Like maybe if I wasn't into it, I might randomly see this recommended because this is something I might click on. Like if I hadn't been into drones. So I think anything like that is super neat to get people finding out about drones and drone racing.
Yeah, for sure. That's always been DRL's goal, is to get drones into the mainstream. And it's great to see. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that it's a DRL pilot who's doing this. I'm sure that I think it's really plausible that PBS reached out to DRL because they're so visible. And I'm a big fan of DRL's mission of popularizing and drone racing and bringing it to the mainstream. So anyway, there's a link to that full 7.5-minute segment. I watched the whole thing. A lot of it, obviously, I already know because I'm into drones, but at the same time, it's really cool to watch some just a mainstream documentary talk about drones. It's pretty good. So, yeah. And that's going to do it.
Yeah. That is it. It's another week of the news.
Yeah. If you guys have any news that you think we should know about, email news@fpvknowitall.com. Down in the it's down there, right there. In fact, some of these items came from emails that you guys sent in, so keep doing that. And we'll see you again next week at 6 p.m. Thanks, Blunty.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua. Much appreciated.
Yeah, and thank you guys in the chat. We are out of here. Oh, hang on. We can't go. We got two. We don't get a ton of super chats on the news, but we did get 2 super chats. Let me get them out of the way. John Larson, thank you for a $5 super chat. Tommy's 250 frame rocks. That's that Sub250 5-inch from Ummagawd. So do his videos explaining his process. Yeah, I love it when frame designers and just experts talk about their process. Andy Shen from Shen Drones does a lot of this too. So it's really good. Check out Tommy's YouTube channel or his website.
Yeah,
Ummagawd.com.
If you've never gone back and read some of the Andy Shen blogs for when he designed the squirt and the geyser and stuff, those are really awesome blogs. They go through the different design process and the different iterations he did, and then trying to fly them, why they didn't work, why he decided on the things he did for things like the squirt and the geyser, where the design considerations came in. Just really cool. Something to go check out.
There's people in the I gotta do this even though we're trying to get off the air. There's people in the chat who are arguing about why would the pilot be wearing a mask inside the helicopter. Guys, you're in a closed environment with another person. That's the perfect time to be wearing a mask. Yeah, but they're both in the military. I don't know if you guys know, but the military is taking this very seriously. They're wearing masks freaking everywhere. The fact that they're all in the Navy doesn't mean they can't get COVID and spread it to each other. So yeah, it's totally plausible that a pilot and a mechanic who are in a helicopter together would absolutely be wearing masks. It's totally plausible. Yeah, but masks aren't even effective. Shut up. That we're not going there. The military, I know people who are in the U.S. military, and I guarantee you, if they were in that situation, by regulation, they'd be wearing masks. So totally plausible. Anyway, Louis Hurtado, thanks for a $5 super chat. Here's $5 to start an AV upgrade fund for ItsBlunty. ItsBlunty, they want you to get an upgraded camera. How's that Patreon going?
Oh, we're getting there.
I'm not trying to bug you on stream, but
no, if you'd like to, I'll go ahead and shout it out since you mentioned if you'd like to support Joshua. There's a Patreon for Joshua Bardwell down in the description. But I also have my own Patreon, patreon.com/itsblunty, where you can support me as well. So maybe you can help me get a new camera, because right now I'm using a Samsung phone as my camera. So
it's really not. It's surprisingly good, but
yeah,
I will not be growing a beard like Blunty. Sorry. I am the trim beard kind of guy. As soon as it gets shed, I mean, who knows? 5 years from now, I may have a long beard, but I do not think, Andy K, that I'll be growing a Blunty beard. The Diesel Girl thinks you need a microphone, Blunty, rather than. I didn't want to bring it up during the stream. Your mic's been crackling a little bit. Have you been playing Cyberpunk again?
No, but I reformatted my computer, so yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what the bitrate is.
Your mic is actually pretty good. What do you got? What is your mic?
It's a Shure SM58.
I thought it was. That's a good mic.
Yeah.
That's a good mic. No.
Yeah. Better for anyway. Instrument recording, because it's not condenser, but it is what it is.
Oh, I mean, so many bands have played through SM58s though as vocal mics. Yeah. They're fine vocal mics.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Well, guys, check out Blunty's channel down in the video description. It's linked. Blunty's doing live streams and other content as well. We'll be back 6 p.m. Tuesday. And thank you to the chat, and thank you to the patrons in the Discord. We are going to get out of here, and I'm going to get some dinner.
Cool. Sounds good, man. Me too.
All right. Later, everybody.